Grenades at Windmills podcast.
Hey there, this is Rhombus Tix, and welcome back to the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. So today I've got a special treat, and I'm going to explain a bit. So for a while, TC was trying to resurrect a wonderful project with some of TC's friends and family members earlier this year to find new fairy tales. But due to life and other serious happenings, they got started but were never finished. And these tales were created under the Creative Commons license, which you can find on the blog, and as well as most of these posts. Each of these was started with a seed that was passed on to somebody else, and then TC, and then I ended up finishing it. But because each of the people in the group had it under the Creative Commons license, then everyone who's involved with that group can claim credit for it or use it. The people who were originally involved in the project were T.C. Ricks, Andrew Greenberg, Grain Sanford, and Julie R. Ray. Others who showed interest were Bill Bridges, Josie Bergen-Lawson, and Fiona Skye. The original project was to start a story and then turn it around round robin style, with each new author adding to the original story. There were currently 4 seeds, and I'll be randomly selecting 2 and pursuing these until they're done. Anyone who participates can submit an email, though so far no one has, after the initial seeds. For example, if I were to post one of the 4 seeds all written up into one point, anyone on the list can continue, else on the list can vote what version they like the most. No one is required to continue at all, and you can write a continuance under any alias that you like. But suffice to say that it turned out remarkably well. I'll even say that TC didn't start this one, although he contributed to it towards the end. The title of the first of these 4 fairy tales is Elowyn, Wisp. Once there was a man and a woman who had no children, despite their best efforts. One evening, when the woman was feeling especially melancholy, she took a walk down by the pond, gathering wildflowers and humming a soft tune as she went. Her fingers moved absently, weaving a garland of flowers as she walked and thought, until she found herself on a path in the forest. She glanced down and was surprised to see that she had woven a small person with her flowers, with a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. She felt a stab of foreboding in her belly, but just as she saw a flickering of light a little way off the path, she could not help herself wandering closer to see what the light was. When she came closer, she could hear singing and music and see the shadows of people dancing about. Far to the edge of the revelry lay a small bassinet. The woman crept closer and saw inside the smallest baby she had ever seen. She thought that she could hold it on the palm of her hand, and picking it up to see, she lay her garland down in its place, and no sooner than she had it, she could not put it down again, and quietly walked back the way she had came, cradling the small baby, a girl she saw, with all the love a mother could give. When she arrived back at the small cabin she shared with her husband, she walked in boldly and said, "Husband, look, I have borne us a daughter. Her name is Elowyn." He was never a bright man, and with a very small child anyway, so he could not question her story. The woman handed the girl to her husband and suddenly felt very ill. She told her husband that she had had a pain, lay down on her bed, and if she woke up again, it was not in this world. The husband, ever after, said that she had died in childbirth. The man did his best to raise the girl. He gave her milk from the cow and from the nanny goat, but she would have none. He made porridge sweetly by honey, but she turned up her nose. All her life she drank naught but the rain as it fell from the sky, and ate naught but the dandelion wisps in the wind, but grew all the same until she was all but a little small for her age. Her father loved her, as he had loved her mother, but he did not understand her very well. She, for her part, did not understand him either. Why did he become so upset when she brought home spiders and rats and other small things that made a very cozy place in her room? For all she could see, he acted as though he were afraid of things, but she knew that could not be so. And why did he insist that he stay inside on nights when the moon was so bright, like it was the day? He would go so far as to lock her up in the room to keep her inside, yet she was very clever, a girl, and he was not such a clever man, so she always found a way to get out. and he would lay down by the pond and let the moon bathe her in its light. It was on such a night as this that she saw the forest a small light. She was overtaken by curiosity and followed it into the forest. As she walked, it seemed to move farther and farther away, and so she stepped along the path and walked deeper into the forest. The next morning, the man woke and unlocked her bedroom door. But in her place on her bed, he only found dust of withered wildflowers. A slight breeze came through the open door, and the old man hurried to collect the dust in a jar. He was not a bright man, but he knew that his lands like he knew the back of his calloused hands. Purple wildflowers grew by his house, and blue ones by his field. Patches of yellow wildflowers sprung up around his pond. Red and pink wildflowers were rare on his lands, appearing mainly where the pond bordered the neighboring woods. He took his walking staff in his hand, gathered cheese, bread, and fresh egg from his speckled hen, and trudged off into the woods. By the pond he found the faintest trace of small footsteps, the impression of shoes he had made, and the nails he had used barely visible in the dawn's light. He followed them into the forest, where the tracks continued along the path. Suddenly they disappeared, and he searched to right and left without the path without any success. He leaned on his staff, peering quietly into the woods. The cry of a wren pierced the stillness. Not the pretty tunes of a bird seeking a mate. They were instead the shrill, incessant sounds of an angered animal. Looking around, he saw a nest in a low branch of a nearby elm. Near it, a black snake coiled in its base. A wren circled angrily over him. The wren flew quickly by the snake, its chirping louder as it circled around the serpent. Despite the racket, the black snake continued inexorably up the tree and towards the little nest. The high-pitched twitter of baby wrens, unable to fly, rose from the nest. The man moved forward without thinking and used his staff to pry the snake from the tree. The snake wrapped itself unwillingly around the staff, and the man could not shake it free. It stared at him, and much to the man's amazement, a low, rumbling voice emanated from deep inside the snake. "Now, what am I to do for dinner?" asked the snake. Almost without thinking, the man reached into his lunch bag and pulled out an egg. "This egg came from a fine hen," he said, "and was never fertilized. It holds no life. Take it instead." The man laid it to the ground. "I prefer warm, live food," said the serpent. When the man did not move, the serpent finally wound itself from the staff and dropped down to the earth. There he studied the egg before him in his jaws to swallow it. Finally satisfied, the snake crawled into the underbrush, a round shape visible in its stomach. The baby wrens continued to chirp, and its mother circled the nest, but her own cries quieted. Not wanting to disturb the bird any more, the man took one look and prepared to return to the path. Then he noticed one small footprint, distinctly Elowyn's, right by the elm. "Thank you," said the mother hen, as it sung a hymn to the sky in the purest dulcet tones, pleaded with gratitude from the lives of her babies. She sang so long and sweetly that for a time the man forgot his cares and wept at the beauty of it all. But when she was done, the wren asked, "What brings a fine human like you into the woods?" "I am seeking my daughter," he asked hopefully. "She is a small human girl with beautiful black hair and eyes as the sea of storm. I have misplaced her." The wind larked sadly at a soulful cry and replied, "Alas, good sir, I have seen no human girl." "Then I shall never see Elowyn again," he sighed, and resuming his search, though his heart was not in it. "Elowyn?" the wren asked hopefully. "Yes, that is the name of my daughter." His cap came off his head, and by his grasp lay in his hand. "Have you seen her?" "I have, but I saw no human by that name, only Elowyn Wisp, daughter of the garland," said the wren, who was confused. Not being the brightest man, he did not ask questions, but jumped up and askance. "She was here." He beamed and jumped. "She was here." "She was, not more than half a day past. Which way?" He looked east and west, but then up again at Mother Wren. "That which way the sun flows," she sang and pointed with her wing. And off again the man went after Elowyn. But deep the sun set, and dark the moon rose in the silver hue of the starry night, and no sign nor hint of Wisp there were. But not passing to sleep through thicket and wild bramble, the man pressed on, never giving up hope. For 3 days and 3 nights he did this, till at last a curious noise he heard a ways forward. There were 3 green bands with 3 green men on 3 green rocks who juggled 3 green swords. They juggled with such skill that not one of them was cut, and not one of them broke a sweat. Though surely flesh and blood, these 3 beings might as well have been automatons. Elowyn's father marched as this marvel went on. He was reluctant to break their concentration, but he had not run into another in many days, and these folks seemed to hopefully know the answer. He was quiet for a time, hoping that they would take a break, and that they could answer him, but they did not stop. Finally, he could stand it no more and asked, "Excuse me, but have you seen my daughter Elowyn?" "We have not," they answered at one. Dejected, the man sighed and started to walk off, but then he remembered what the wren had called her. "Wait! She is also called by the name Elowyn Wisp." The three men smiled and sighed with such delight that their swords flew up and out to the four winds, landing upright on the ground around them. "So beautiful," said the first. "So wise," said the second. "So kind," said the third. "Yes, we have seen her." They pointed to the east. "Not less than 1 day past." "Wonderful," said the man, and thanked the sword jugglers and ran to the east. For 6 days and 6 nights he walked on and saw nothing. But on the night of the 6th night he saw 6 blue bands and 6 blue monkeys jungling 6 blue wands, which they wore on 6 blue hats with such skill that put the 3 men juggling the 3 swords to shame. They did not stop, and they did not speak, but simply smiled and juggled the wands between them on top of the 6 blue bands. Again the man waited, but his patience could not abide, and he asked, "Have you seen my daughter Elowyn?" They simply shook their heads. "Elowyn Wisps?" Their delight at hearing the name caused all the monkeys to hoot and howl with delight as the wands flew to the 4 winds, and thunder and lightning and fire and tides and wind and earthquakes shattered the land about. But the monkeys did not care. "So wise," said the first. "So beautiful," said the second. "So kind," said the third. The other 3 nodded in agreement and said, "We have seen her. She passed not more than 1 day past. Best of luck." The man thanked the monkeys and ran onward. For 9 days he continued east and saw nothing. The land was bleak, and soon the woods faded, and the hill turned flat, and even the wind stopped, and there was nothing but bleakness as far as the eye could see. And just when the man was despondent and could go no farther, he saw a menagerie of 9 bears, 9 lions, and 9 tigers, on 9 gold bands, each juggling 9 cups. "What is this?" the man asked, wondering how such a group was gathered together, and asked them, "Have you seen my daughter Elowyn?" They shook their heads. "Elowyn Wisp?" The cups went all akimbo and run into the ground, filling the land with food and plants and seas and rivers of plenty as all the world around them. "So wise," said the first group of bears. "So beautiful," said the second group of tigers. "So kind," said the third group of lions. "She was here but 1 hour past," and they pointed to the east. Heart hardened, the man ran as fast as he could after his little girl. He walked through a briar patch made of rosewood and dust, swirling around him with sapphire and ruby dust motes. As he walked, the stars shimmered and rippled as if the sky were a bed sheet, changing with new stars each time someone shook the sheets. The ground hummed, and as he walked, it worked up to his bones and then to his teeth. And then he came to a large lake surrounded by white and gold bamboo, all of which was cut and formed into a giant artificial islands in thick slabs as wide as a man's leg, with a regal pathway that went up into the still waters. Soft, gentle music played in the background. This was his daughter, lying despondent on the ground. She was so sad and crying so much that her father did not know what to do. "Why are you crying, Elowyn?" he asked her. At first she did not hear and wept only. Despondent, he tried again, "Why are you crying, daughter mine?" At this she stopped crying and looked up, looking hopefully at her father, and she started crying a second time. A third time he asked, "Why are you crying, my beloved daughter? I will do anything I can to make it better or fix what is wrong." And then she smiled. "Father, I am ill." "Why? Whatever has caused it?" he asked, and with all the concern that only a father can show. "I am of 2 kingdoms, both why I am here and from there, the temple of the farthest star. Can you help me?" What a silly question, for it was indeed a silly question, and the man, who did not know much, never thought he would tell these words to another soul, but in this case he had no choice. "If I can do but the slightest thing in the world, or the biggest thing to move a mountain, you have but to name it, and I will find a way." And so she smiled, and the world lit up a bit more, as did her father's heart. "And for it all," she said, "can you go home and bring 3 bags of earth back here for my bed? And then I shall mix the earth here, and then she'll be well again? It shall be done." And he hugged her and sung her a lullaby to help her to sleep. And as quick as he could, he began to go home. This was not very quick, but he traveled around the tigers who offered him a ride, and for 3 days he rode on the back of a tiger. And the tiger grew tired and could help him no more, and a mighty stag came and helped him. One word of the name of his daughter, and they had no choice. On and on he rode, until he came to the tree where he had been rescued the wren from the snake. The man was exhausted from lack of breath. Running and riding and sailing and fretting had all taken their toll, but at least he had his health, unlike his poor daughter Elowyn. "Whatever is wrong?" asked Mother Wren. "I am tired, and have some way yet to go. Elowyn is ill, and I must fetch earth from our home for," he thought a moment, "well, I don't know exactly what she needs it, only that she does. And I am worried that something is happening to her while I am come all the way here or going all the way back." "Oh no," chirped the wren. "We must not let something happen to poor Elowyn. I am still thankful for how you saved me, and my children have grown strong as have their children." The wren began to chirp, and a giant flock of wrens, hundreds and hundreds of them, flew down from the heavens and the woods and gathered around the man like a storm cloud, lifting him up into the air and taking him through the sky to his home. Quickly he reached down and gathered several handfuls of dirt, and off into the clouds again they flew. On and on the man flew until they returned to the great crystal gazebo where Elowyn had been laid. She was unconscious and looked extremely pale. Taking the earth from outside of the farm and mixing it with the earth here in this otherworldly realm, he planted Elowyn on top of it. At first nothing happened, and the man cried all night, and the birds and the beast as well. But then the sun began to rise, and shone through wondrous crystals of the gazebo, and made a fire and a light and a sea of shimmering sunshine. The clouds drifted away, and the orange and the reds of dawn slowly gave way to a perfect, lovely blue sky. And Elowyn fluttered her eyelids and took a deep breath. "Oh my, I feel much better." And the man wept for joy, and everyone celebrated. Elowyn smiled, and her father had saved her. "Now you can live forever with me." And so he did. And they had a magnificent feast every day, and heard stories of all the world over, and rested in new peace forevermore. And Elowyn was always healthy and shining and bright, and always remembered how her father had saved her, and as a result was even kinder than she would have otherwise been to every living thing, and thus her realm became a sanctuary for all that was good and holy forevermore. The end.
Shut up! This has been Rhombus Tix reading to you from the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Sound editing by Grayson Bergman. Initial bumper by Electro Rock Cardiogram. To fight the forces of evil!